welcome to our next episode in our series for Women's History Month, hosted by VanillaSoft. Today, I am so excited we are joined by Heather Combs, who is the Chief Revenue Officer of Three Pillar Global. Heather, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. So starting off the same way we always start off, tell us how you got into sales.
By absolute accident. I did not intend to have a career in sales. I was just out of graduate school and had moved back to the DC area working for a nonprofit. And it didn't take long to figure out that a nonprofit salary would not pay DC rent and graduate school loans. So I did the rounds into the consulting network and wound up at the corporate executive board just as it was going public from the advisory board, its parent company. And in that went into the research side of the business, the consulting side. But a few months later, there was an opportunity for some of the young research staff to call on clients to participate in an upcoming conference. And the person who got the most clients to buy a ticket to this conference was able to go. And the conference was in Chicago. And I had never been to Chicago, so I decided I really wanted to go. And I sold the heck out of these tickets. And needless to say, I was asked into account management and sales from there. Not really sure what it was at the time, but I was excited to talk to people rather than to have my head down in research. And so I made the switch.
That's fantastic. I love that. I kind of got into it just by competition and wanted to go to Chicago. So what do you think, what do you think drove that early success? I mean, your first time selling something and you're able to win this fabulous prize. What do you think, where do you think that those instincts or those skills came from?
I think I'm competitive by nature. I think I've always been one of those people who wanted to win, wanted to be out front. I had been an athlete growing up, which is still something when I'm interviewing candidates, I look for some proof that they've been competitive and have that drive. But I also think I'm outgoing and I'm loud and I'm talkative, and the definition of extrovert definitely applies. And so I think it was a better fit, truthfully, than having kind of a heads down desk job.
That totally makes sense. And I think that's something I wouldn't know anything about at all. So kind of going back to your early days, I mean, what were some of the big obstacles you faced, especially early on, and how did you overcome those?
Well, I'm old enough to be that being a woman in sales was really unusual at the time. My first role in selling was to general counsel of primarily Fortune 500 companies. And so if you can think about what that demographic looked like at the time, so this would have been like late 90s, early 2000s, general counsel, it was pretty stereotypically a white male in his 60s. And here I was, a young woman in my 20s. So the biggest place was getting comfortable with that awkward moment of the age disparity, the gender difference, and pushing through it.
So how did you do that? Because I mean, I hear that and I'm laughing, first of all, because you literally just described my father-in-law as a general counsel. And he still scares me to this day. But how do you get over, especially when you talk about confidence and getting over that mental obstacle, what pushed it over the edge for you? What tricks did you figure out to help you get past that?
I used to have this saying at the time to embrace low expectations. So what would happen with these gentlemen at the time is that they would say, honey and sweetie, and they would accept lunch invitations, and they would pretty willingly have me to the office. I think expecting that it was an easy, relaxing sort of, exhale of a meeting. And so their guard was way down. And then I got to come in and present our, value proposition, and then challenge them on if they were able to make the deal that day. Can you sign this, or is there somebody we need to go to for approval? And so that difference in pushing through where the low expectations, just embrace it, walk in, be confident, and wow them because they're not expecting it, and then ask for the business. And you really turn the tables on, which one of us has here? Can you sign this deal? That was in the days that we used to sign them on, actual paper.
I think that's one of my new favorite closing questions. Can you sign this, or do we need to get somebody else? Because the right personality, that would just drive them up the wall. I love it.
And lawyers,
So,
you can imagine, right in there.
yes, I can. So let's kind of think back, maybe a couple of years in. Is there a moment you can remember, or something that happened where you thought, this is what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life?
I don't know if I ever thought the rest of my life, but I know when I felt sold, like I was all in. Um, we were having one of those famous meetings, sales team pull-ups, I think we used to call them, and they're encouraging the team to go out and press harder that day and continue to push through the closing of a quarter. And then they were rewarding people who had done well. They had done one thing or another. And there used to be a bonus where they would hand out a $100 bill, actual cash, which I think is now illegal. But at the time, it handed over for this on the spot signature. And I decided that was it, that I could quite literally get a person to sign a piece of paper and you would just hand me $100 bill in that moment that I was in. I wanted to be able to work where I could directly impact my worth and my compensation, and loved it from that moment.
That's fantastic. Who doesn't love a C note? That's just that's just
Right.
delightful. So, what's a skill that you wish you'd learned earlier?
Um, oh gosh, there's probably so many. There are probably so many I still need to learn. Um, I think the turning point in my career into the leadership team and being able to head functions was really gaining the business acumen of being able to talk about the whole business. So if you're limited to only sales or marketing or the revenue, top line part of the business, and you can't talk about the bottom line and the cost structure and what the business model is and the profitability, and how we do financing and funding, then you're really missing an entire part of the conversation that's happening at the business. And so I think that the change there was really moving into business acumen and a holistic view of the business that I wish I would have done even earlier.
So, how do you build up that business acumen? Where do you go to make sure that you understand all those different parts of the business, especially if you're on a sales team that maybe feels a little more siloed?
Um, well, first, I would make your interest absolutely known, because I suspect that there are people that will happily show you into that space. The revenue operations teams or sales ops teams often either know or need to know this, and then of course your finance teams are fantastic. So if you can find a mentor in the finance team, or befriend somebody in accounting or rev rec or the like, you can probably get it on a small scale. For me, I added that to actually also going to an executive class at the Booth School in Chicago, and putting myself through the additional learning so that I really could read a balance sheet all the way through.
That sounds horrifically intimidating, but probably totally worth it. So,
Worth it every long day.
that's great. So, can you think of any points where you think you were undervalued or underestimated, and how did you respond to that?
Um, I think for women in sales, women in leadership in general, each time you're the only person in the room that looks like you or is dressed like you or communicates the way you do, I'm always wowed by the men who will cut each other off and talk over each other to make their point, which is generally just not how women communicate. And so even the smartest and most aggressive women in the room will often not do that. They're just more polite, frankly, than their male counterparts. So each time that happens, even to this day, I still feel a little undervalued, a little dismissed when someone talks over me or cuts me off. And I've learned that you just have to press through the moment, pause, wait on them to stop talking, and then say, I'm sorry, I wasn't quite finished, and then go ahead. But like, don't lose your cool or your confidence in that moment.
That's very good advice that I could probably handle a little bit more. So, what would you say to somebody who is considering a career in sales?
Do it. Absolutely do it. The places that I hear women hold up and not go forward and try sales is they often create roadblocks for themselves that aren't really there, or that they can work through, and they just haven't gone through the steps to do that. So women, for instance, will often say, well, I don't want to take a job where there's travel because someday I want to have kids, so in their younger part of their career. And my answer to that is I have 5 of them and I still travel and I still am in, revenue generation. It is working that out with an awesome partner who helps on the home front and doesn't travel for his job, and then having the child care support to do that. But long before you get to children, you don't stop yourself from something that hasn't happened yet by a barrier that you think is somewhere down the road. Whether it's travel, there's being a little nervous about or intimidated by the outgoingness that's required in sales or the competitiveness. Absolutely go for it. You will find that you're better at it than you think.
That's so true. And I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of women throwing up roadblocks because of their perception of either what the role is or what they think they want from life. It's especially early on. That's very similar to a lot of advice I give people is just don't limit your options. You never know what's coming down the road, and what's right in front of you today could be very different than what's right in front of you 10 years from now. So one of the things I love about sales is it exposes you to all those different parts of the businesses, all these different career options and things like that. So it's interesting to watch the different paths that this can take. And thank you for calling out the fact that you are a mother, because so many people protect that. I feel like it's still a bit of a nerves about, do you want to be open about, do I have kids and how many, and do I want kids? That's a scary topic even to this day for a lot of women to bring up.
I wish that weren't the case, because when I am trying to hire somebody who I need to get things done, I look around and a working mom is my first choice if that's an option, because the women who can handle everything that is coming at them and in the office and at home, they do things efficiently. They do things effectively. They don't have time to redo it or to, waste time. They're like, I've got to be home in a few hours, guys. Like, let's get this finished. I love their ability to march through a project to its completion and get out of there.
I could not agree more. I have never regretted hiring a veteran or a working mother, ever. Some of the best employees I've ever had. So, What advice would you have for a woman who feels like she is potentially getting up against that glass ceiling or is being held back and unable to progress in her career?
Well, a few things. So one would be that business acumen we talked about, making sure you're well-rounded outside of the silo that you're in. Because if there's only one job for you ahead, you really can bump up against it if there's someone great in it. So make sure that you can move left and right as well as you can move up. The other is to ensure that you have good mentors and sponsors, people who are looking out for your interest and who have your best in their mind, that they're really pushing for you, not just coaching you on what you should do, but they're helping you. They're making introductions. They're facilitating training classes. They're perhaps offering you big projects to work on. If they're outside your company, but in your industry, to make sure they're inviting you to conferences or to speak on panels or do things for you that are really advancing your career so that you're not doing it alone.
Absolutely true. And I think that's one of the most common things we've heard in this series is you're not alone. Lean on that network. So our last question is, how can we best support all the women in sales so we can continue to achieve great things together?
Yeah, for this one, I would speak to the women who own budgets, who are now hiring managers, who have come far enough in their career to be the person who can offer mentoring. Use what you have for good. So when you are the one deciding on the promotion for a set of people in your ranks, if you are hiring someone, give that woman a chance make sure that you've got her back. Make sure that you're using your budget dollars to get her the training and opportunity she needs. I think this really, like, women, we can help pave the path behind us. And I would really call upon the people who've got that opportunity to take it.
Thank you so much for calling that out. And thank you so much, Heather, for joining us. This has been absolutely delightful on a number of levels. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning in. All month long, we're going to be releasing more of these videos for Women's History Month. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thanks so much.